After a night with his mistress, he returned at dawn. His child's toy lay forgotten. Sau một đêm với tình nhân, anh ta trở về lúc rạng sáng, món đồ chơi của con anh ta nằm đó bị lãng quên. By 89, the front door creaked open at 5:12 a.m., just as the first thin line of dawn brushed against the Manhattan skyline. Grant Ellington stepped inside with the swagger of a man who believed he had outsmarted the night. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie shoved into his pocket, and the faint trace of a woman's perfume clung to him like a confession he wasn't afraid to carry. He kicked off his shoes, then froze. A small green dinosaur toy lay in the center of the foyer tile. Its plastic tail was cracked from being dropped, and its painted smile looked strangely out of place in the cold morning light. Grant blinked at it, confused for half a second, before he nudged it aside with his heel, as if it were nothing more than harmless clutter. But to Harper Ellington, standing in the hallway, hand braced against her 6-month belly, that toy was everything. It was the gift she bought last night, using the last $20 in her wallet, a sweet surprise she'd hoped to give him when he came home. A way to tell him their baby was a boy. Instead, she watched her husband shove the toy aside like it was debris from someone else's life. "Where were you?" Harper's voice trembled, though she tried desperately to steady it. She had been up all night, cramping, dizzy, calling him again and again until her hands shook. Grant didn't even flinch. "Working. Don't start." Her breath hitched. "Working? With perfume on your collar?" Something shifted in his eyes. Annoyance, arrogance, a boredom that stung sharper than betrayal. "You're imagining things, Harper. Pregnancy makes you dramatic." But behind Grant, outside the still open door, a shadow lingered. Rowan Beckett, their Fifth Avenue neighbor, returning from his early run. His gaze lowered to the toy, then lifted to Harper's pale, shaking frame. And in that moment, Rowan understood something Grant never would. Because he was the one who had taken Harper to the ER 6 hours earlier, and Grant still didn't know. Harper Ellington had never imagined life could feel this heavy, like she was carrying 2 weights at once. The child growing inside her, and the man who no longer cared whether she stood or fell. At 28, she was the kind of woman people described as gentle, dependable, steady, the kind of woman who brought homemade banana bread to neighbors and remembered everyone's birthdays. But gentleness, she was learning, could become a magnet for cruelty when given to the wrong person. Before Manhattan, before Grant's high-rise dreams, Harper lived a simple life in upstate New York. She worked at a small elementary school library where the air always smelled faintly of crayons and optimism. Children adored her. Teachers relied on her. Life was soft, steady, predictable, and she believed, truly believed, that when Grant Ellington walked into her world with his sharp suit and easy confidence, she had stumbled into a love that would grow old with her. But love had a strange way of shifting shape, especially when one person stopped holding their end. Pregnancy changed Harper's body, round her belly, swollen feet, constant nausea, but it had also changed her heart. She loved her baby more fiercely with every passing day, but she also felt more alone than ever. While other expecting mothers attended birthing classes with supportive partners, Harper sat by herself on the edge of their bed, folding tiny onesies and whispering promises she feared she'd have to keep alone. Grant had once claimed he wanted a family. Now he treated the pregnancy like a burden, a mistake he didn't sign up for. He demanded she work fewer hours, yet complained she wasn't earning enough. He lectured her about budgeting, then spent freely on dinners, events, and networking that lasted long into the night. Worst of all, he made her doubt herself. Every tear, every fear, every quiet question was brushed off as hormones. But Rowan Beckett had not brushed her off. 6 hours earlier, when Harper collapsed in the hallway, clutching her stomach, Rowan had been the one to lift her gently, to tell her she'd be all right, to sit with her at the ER until she could breathe again. He didn't know her well, yet he stayed, a stranger who cared more in 1 hour than her husband had in months. And now, as Harper faced Grant's cold eyes and colder heart, a single thought hit her with the clarity of a bell tolling. Maybe Grant wasn't the man she married. Maybe he never was. And Rowan might know secrets about Grant she could never imagine. Manhattan had a way of making people feel small, like the buildings themselves were watching, judging, deciding who belonged and who didn't. Harper Ellington knew that feeling too well. She lived in the shadow of Grant's ambitions, trailing behind him at charity events and corporate dinners like an accessory he didn't know where to place. Before the pregnancy, he'd bring her along to a few gatherings, mostly when he needed to look family-oriented. But after her belly began to show, the invitations grew rare. "It's better if you stay home," he would say, adjusting his cufflinks in the mirror. "These events are exhausting. You need rest." But it wasn't rest he cared about. It was image, his image. And nowhere was that image more important than the world he shared with Celeste Monroe. Celeste dressed in couture like she was born wrapped in it. She understood the language of wealth, the art of subtle cruelty, and the power of being seen in the right places. Grant worshipped the version of himself reflected in her eyes. Harper had seen photos Grant in meticulously tailored suits, Celeste laughing with her hand on his arm, the glow of chandeliers casting them as the new it couple. It wasn't just infidelity, it was humiliation. Grant's favorite haunt was a rooftop lounge overlooking Fifth Avenue, a place where champagne flowed easy and nobody asked questions as long as the money was crisp. Harper had only been there once. She remembered feeling like she was walking on someone else's carpet, afraid to breathe too loudly. She didn't belong, and Grant never let her forget it. Meanwhile, Rowan Beckett lived in a world even higher, literally and figuratively. His penthouse overlooked the city like a quiet fortress. He didn't surround himself with luxury to impress anyone. His wealth felt understated, almost accidental. His focus was on the children his foundation supported, not the spotlight. That was what made him different. When Harper looked at Rowan's world, she didn't feel small. She felt safe, seen. But she wasn't part of that world either. Not yet. The contrast between the two men's spaces was suffocating. Grant's world glittered but cut like broken glass. Rowan's world felt like warm light in winter, and Harper stood between them, on the edge of a life she never asked for and another she never imagined wanting. That morning, as Grant disappeared into the bedroom to shower off the night, Harper glanced out the window. Rowan was still standing on the sidewalk, looking up at her, and he looked like a man who knew something she desperately needed to hear. Grant Ellington had always been a man who craved admiration. In his youth, that hunger looked like ambition. But in Manhattan, ambition had morphed into something else, greed dressed in designer suits. And Celeste Monroe, with her polished smile and razor-sharp instincts, knew exactly how to feed it. Celeste was everything Grant believed he deserved: glamorous, confident, dripping in brand-name charm. She spoke the language of high society like it was her mother tongue: soft laughs, whispered secrets, champagne diplomacy. And the more she elevated Grant in that glittering circle, the more he clung to her. Harper? She couldn't do that for him. At least, that's what Grant told himself. Celeste had a talent for exploiting insecurity. The first time she met Harper at a corporate dinner, she scanned her from head to toe: plain cardigan, modest dress, gentle smile. Harper had extended her hand, hopeful and kind. Celeste shook it with fingers that barely touched, already dismissing her. Later that night, Celeste whispered to Grant, "She seems sweet, but she's not built for your world, is she?" It was a simple sentence, wrapped in sweetness, and it worked like poison. From then on, Grant started comparing Harper's simplicity against Celeste's sophistication, Harper's soft-spoken warmth against Celeste's electric charm, Harper's pregnancy limitations against Celeste's carefree nightlife. In Celeste's world, Harper was an obstacle. In Grant's mind, Harper became a burden. What neither of them knew was how far Celeste was willing to go. She had plans, real plans, not just to claim Grant, but to position herself beside him as they climbed into the upper tier of Manhattan's elite. She used her PR connections to slide Grant into events he had no credentials for. She coached him on talking points, curated his image, introduced him to people who mattered. And Grant, dazzled by the spotlight, let her sculpt him like clay. The affair wasn't just physical, it was strategic. Every time Harper called and Grant declined the call, Celeste's smile grew a little sharper. Every time Harper cried alone in their apartment, Celeste looped her arm through Grant's in a champagne bar, whispering, "You're meant for bigger things." Celeste wanted Harper gone, out of the picture, out of Grant's life, out of Manhattan, if possible. And she had already set her next move in motion. A message, a photo, a weapon meant to break Harper completely. A weapon that would arrive before the day was over. It happened 3 hours after dawn, 3 hours after Grant stepped over that cracked green dinosaur toy, 3 hours after Harper realized her marriage had slipped beyond saving. She was sitting at the small kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of lukewarm tea she couldn't bring herself to drink. The apartment was still, heavy, holding the kind of silence that made a person afraid to breathe too loudly. Harper's belly tightened again, a reminder of the tiny life inside her, the only thing anchoring her in that moment. Her phone buzzed. A single notification. Sender unknown. She hesitated, thumb trembling before she opened it. The photo nearly knocked the breath from her lungs. Grant, Celeste, together. Last night, in the rooftop lounge that Harper had only been allowed to visit once. Grant was leaning close to Celeste, his hand on her waist. Their heads touched. Celeste's red dress shimmered in the city lights, her smile smug and knowing the smile of a woman who believed she had already won. Underneath the photo was a message. You deserve to know the truth. That was all, but it was enough to shatter her. Her chest tightened, the room tilting for a moment. She tried to steady her breath, but tears blurred everything, her phone screen, the kitchen tiles, her own sense of reality. Harper had always feared Grant's distance. Now she understood it. It wasn't distance, it was replacement. The worst part wasn't the photo. It was the knowing. Harper remembered calling him last night, voice shaking as she begged him to come home. She remembered the sharp pain, the dizziness, the way she had slid down the hallway wall until Rowan appeared like an angel she never asked for. Grant hadn't ignored her because he was busy. He ignored her because Celeste was standing right beside him. Her phone buzzed again. Another photo. This time, Grant was kissing Celeste. Her stomach twisted. She forced herself to breathe, to stay conscious. Her baby needed oxygen she could barely find. Just then, her front door opened. Grant emerged from the hallway, clean-shaven, refreshed, wearing the cologne he only used for special events. "Why are you crying?" he asked, annoyance dripping from every word. She looked at him, really looked. The man she married was gone. Her voice cracked. "Grant, I know everything." He paused, eyes narrowing, calculating. And then, unbelievably, he smirked. A smirk that told her he didn't fear losing her at all, because in his mind, she was already gone. And he had no idea the truth she held could destroy him far beyond marriage. Grant's smirk lingered in the air long after he walked past her, heading toward the bedroom as if nothing meaningful had happened. As if her heart wasn't breaking in real time. As if the child inside her wasn't already trembling from the shock pulsing through her body. Harper sat frozen at the kitchen table, fingers tightening around the edge until her knuckles turned white. She had imagined heartbreak before quiet arguments, cold shoulders, a fading romance. But she never pictured betrayal so blatant, so shameless, so deeply cruel. Her breathing turned shallow. The edges of the room blurred. The familiar ache in her abdomen sharpened, wrapping around her core like a tightening band. She whispered to her unborn baby, "Hold on, sweet one. Mommy's here." But she wasn't sure she was. Her phone vibrated again, but she couldn't lift her hand. It felt too heavy, like gravity itself had turned against her. Sweat beaded along her forehead. A wave of nausea rolled through her. She blinked hard, trying to steady her vision, but black spots danced across the edges. Grant reappeared, buttoning a fresh shirt. "I'm heading out. Meeting at 11. You're leaving?" Harper's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't want drama this morning," he said, grabbing his keys. "You're emotional. Rest. We'll talk later." She felt something inside her crack, a soft tearing, the kind no doctor could stitch back together. "Grant, I'm not okay," she forced out. "I need you." He looked at her the way someone looks at a dirty dish left in the sink. "An inconvenience. Call your doctor if you're worried. I can't miss this meeting." His footsteps faded down the hallway. The door closed, and the last ounce of strength inside Harper slipped away. A sob tore from her chest, raw, broken, unrestrained. She curled forward, arms wrapped around her stomach, trying to protect the little life inside her from the storm outside. Her vision blurred completely now. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled, sending her collapsing onto the cold tile floor. The world tilted sideways. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She clawed at the floor, trying to pull herself up, but her body refused to respond. Her phone, lying a few feet away, lit up with a message. A name appeared on the screen, Rowan Beckett, and then another message. Just as her consciousness began to slip, "Harper, are you all right?" I had a feeling something was wrong. Before she could reach for the phone, darkness swept over her like a tide, and Rowan was already running up the stairs to her door. When consciousness finally drifted back to her, Harper felt the soft hum of a monitor beside her and the sterile chill of a hospital room. For a moment, everything was fog, white walls, muted beeping, the faint scent of antiseptic. Then she heard a voice, low and steady, like an anchor pulling her back from deep water. "Harper, you're safe. I've got you." Rowan Beckett. His presence filled the room quietly, like warm light. He sat at her bedside, elbows on his knees, worry etched across his normally composed face. He wasn't dressed for business today, no tailored suit, no polished shoes. Just a gray sweater and sleeves pushed to his forearms, as if he left the house the second he sensed something was wrong. She swallowed hard. How did I get here?" "You fainted," Rowan said gently. "I found you on the kitchen floor. You didn't respond when I knocked, so I let myself in." He paused, eyes softening. "You scared me." Her hand instinctively moved to her belly. "The baby?" "Stable," he reassured her. "But the doctor said stress is hurting you both." Stress. A simple word for a storm. Harper blinked back tears. "Grant didn't come. He left for a meeting." Rowan's jaw tightened. He didn't speak at first. He didn't have to. His silence said what he refused to voice openly. He had known all along what kind of man Grant was. "Harper," Rowan finally said, voice low, "there's something you need to know. Something I should have told you sooner." Her pulse quickened. "What is it?" He glanced toward the doorway, as if making sure they were alone. Then he pulled his phone from his pocket and opened a file, documents, screenshots, transfers. Things she didn't recognize yet. "I've been tracking some financial activity connected to Grant," he said carefully. "He's been funneling money from your joint account into Celeste's projects. Thousands, maybe more." Her breath caught. "He's stealing from us?" Rowan shook his head. "Not us, Harper. From you. He's been preparing to leave, and he's involved in something much darker." She stared at him, heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear her next breath. "Darker? What do you mean?" Rowan hesitated a long, heavy pause. "I didn't want to tell you until you were strong enough. But Grant isn't just having an affair. He's caught up in a scheme that could ruin more than just your marriage." Harper's fingers clutched the blanket. "What scheme?" Rowan leaned forward, eyes steady with a truth that would change everything. "It's about Celeste and what she's planning to do with Grant's name." The morning after she was discharged from the hospital, Harper moved slowly through the small apartment. Rowan had arranged for her a quiet, sunlit space in Queens that felt impossibly gentle compared to the chaos she had left behind. She wasn't used to peace. She wasn't used to being treated like someone who mattered. For years, Harper had defined herself by what she could endure. Now she was learning to define herself by what she deserved. She stood before the bathroom mirror, palm resting on her stomach, and studied her reflection. The woman staring back looked tired, yes, but not broken. There was a steadiness forming behind her eyes, a quiet resolve that hadn't been there days earlier. Maybe pain wasn't the ending. Maybe it was the beginning. She opened the box Rowan had left on the kitchen table. Inside was a soft maternity sweater, a warm pair of flats, and a slim paperback book, The Strength We Find When Everything Falls Apart. A note rested on top in his handwriting. "You are not alone, Harper. Not anymore." Her throat tightened, not from sadness but something gentler, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safety, consideration, the feeling of being seen. Later that afternoon, Rowan arrived to check on her. He carried groceries, a bag of prenatal vitamins, and the kind of quiet presence that didn't demand anything from her. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Different," she admitted. "Stronger, now that I know the truth." He nodded. Grant and Celeste think they're untouchable, but people who build their lives on lies always forget one thing. "What's that?" Harper asked softly. "They forget the people they hurt eventually learn how to fight back." Her pulse quickened, not fear this time, but courage awakening somewhere deep inside. Rowan pulled up a chair, spreading documents across the table. "Celeste is using Grant as cover for a fraudulent marketing scheme. When it collapses, and it will, she's planning to pin the entire thing on him. Harper absorbed every word, her anger no longer wild but focused. "So, Grant helped ruin my life," she said quietly, "and now Celeste will ruin his." Rowan's eyes softened. Unless someone stops her first. For the first time, Harper felt the faint stirrings of control. Power. She had spent months shrinking herself to survive, but she was done shrinking. She reached for the documents, straightened her back, and breathed deeply. "I'm ready," she said. "Tell me what I have to do." Rowan held her gaze for a long, steady moment, because he knew this was the moment Harper Ellington finally stood up. And neither Grant nor Celeste had any idea the woman they underestimated had just begun to fight. Grant Ellington always believed consequences were for other people. Men like him, sharp suits, confident smiles, the right contacts didn't fall. They rose, climbed, ascended, and when someone got in the way, he simply stepped over them. The problem was, he didn't notice how many people he had stepped on. Not until the first domino tipped. It happened on a Wednesday morning, inside the sleek glass lobby of the marketing firm where Grant worked. The office hummed with its usual rhythm, heels clicking, elevator doors opening, phones ringing. Grant strutted through the space, adjusting his tie, ready to charm investors with pitches he barely understood but delivered well. Then he noticed the stairs. Quiet at first, then balder, then unmistakably sharp. Two interns whispered behind their tablets. The senior director looked away the moment Grant caught his gaze. Even the receptionist, who usually greeted him with flattery, merely nodded stiffly. Grant frowned. "What's going on?" The receptionist hesitated before sliding her phone toward him. A video, already at 15,000 views internally. Grant tapped it, and the world he carefully crafted began to split open. It was him leaving the rooftop lounge with Celeste Monroe, her lips on his cheek, his arm around her waist. But worse, someone had added captions. While his pregnant wife was at home alone. Company funds being misused? Is this who represents us? Grant's stomach dropped. "This shouldn't be public," he snapped. "Who leaked this?" No one answered. The silence was its own verdict. Just then, the elevator opened, and Celeste stepped out red-lipped, composed, but with a flicker of something tightly restrained. Not guilt, not fear. Calculation. "Grant," she said, voice low, "we need to talk." He grabbed her arm, pulling her into a side hallway. "Did you know about this video?" Celeste smoothed her hair. "Of course I knew. Everybody knows. It's circulating faster than we expected." "We?" Grant echoed. "What do you mean, we?" Celeste didn't blink. "Grant, don't be naive. These things don't happen by coincidence." Realization hit him like a blow. Someone wanted him exposed. And Celeste wasn't nearly as blindsided as she pretended. "Tell me you didn't plan this," he demanded, breath sharp. Celeste tilted her head, the faintest smile touching her lips. "I plan many things, Grant, but right now, I need you calm. The firm is meeting privately in an hour. Your position is unstable." Grant felt the ground shift beneath him. His marriage was collapsing. His job was slipping, his reputation unraveling. And Celeste, his glamorous salvation, wasn't reaching for his hand. She was stepping back, far back, because she knew something he didn't yet understand. And Rowan and Harper were already preparing the next blow. Grant Ellington had always assumed he controlled the narrative. He believed he could juggle two worlds, Harper's gentle devotion and Celeste's glittering ambition, without consequence. But on Thursday morning, the walls began to close in, and Celeste Monroe was holding the final brick. Harper didn't know it yet, but Celeste had started preparing months ago. Every whispered conversation, every staged photo, every flattering introduction she arranged for Grant, none of it was affection. It was scaffolding, a structure meant to collapse at the exact moment she needed a clean exit. And that moment arrived sooner than Grant expected. Inside a conference room on the 17th floor, Grant sat surrounded by executives whose faces were carved with suspicion. The leaked video had reached not just employees but clients, partners, and the firm's legal team. Reputation was currency here, and Grant's balance was suddenly overdrawn. "We've reviewed the footage," one director said, sliding a tablet across the table. "There are also financial discrepancies linked to your department." Grant stiffened. "What discrepancies?" The director tapped the tablet. line items, transactions, payments labeled as PR enhancements that were really deposits into Celeste Monroe's private business accounts. Grant swallowed hard. Celeste had told him these were networking reimbursements. He believed her. Now they were being presented as evidence against him. And Celeste? She was nowhere in sight. When the meeting adjourned, Grant stormed toward her office. His heart hammered, panic rising like fire in his throat. He flung the door open. Celeste sat at her desk, perfectly calm, scrolling through her phone like the world was not actively burning around him. "Why didn't you warn me?" he demanded. "They're blaming me for everything." She looked up slowly. "Grant, darling, that's because everything points to you. You set me up," he said, voice cracking. "This was your plan." Celeste leaned back, crossing her legs with elegance that felt like mockery. "You were useful," she admitted, "but you were also sloppy. And sloppy men sink careers. You said we were a team." She smirked. "We were. Until you stopped being beneficial." He stepped forward. "Celeste, please help me make this right." Her eyes hardened. "I'm not risking my future for a man who can't protect his own." The knife twisted. She stood, smoothing her blazer. "A word of advice? Get ahead of the story before Harper does. Because when people find out how you treated your pregnant wife," she let the sentence hang, deadly, deliberate. "You won't just lose your job, Grant. You'll lose everything." Grant felt the room spin. If Celeste was abandoning him, he was truly alone. And Harper now had the power to destroy him far worse than Celeste ever could. Harper Ellington had never seen herself as someone powerful. Strength, to her, was always something other women had. Women who weren't exhausted, women who weren't afraid, women who weren't carrying the weight of an unborn child while holding a collapsing life together. But as she sat across from Rowan Beckett in a quiet cafe near the East River, sunlight filtering through the windows, something inside her shifted. For the first time in months, she felt like she wasn't drowning. Rowan slid a portfolio toward her. "I want you to look at this," he said gently. "It's a proposal for a literacy program we're launching at the foundation. I think you'd be perfect to lead it." Harper blinked. "Me? Rowan? I'm not qualified for something that important." "You're more than qualified," he replied. "You've worked with children for years. You understand them. You care. And caring," he added softly, "is the foundation for anything good." Her heart warmed in a way she wasn't used to warmth, not tied to fear or desperation, but hope. Hope felt dangerous. Hope felt new. She opened the folder. It wasn't charity, it was a real opportunity. Salary, flexibility for medical appointments, long-term potential. A job that valued her mind, not just her presence. She imagined working in a team where her voice mattered, where her ideas weren't brushed aside as too emotional. "Why me?" she whispered. Rowan's gaze didn't waver. "Because you deserve a future not shaped by Grant's decisions." Something in Harper's chest loosened an invisible knot she had been carrying for years. She looked out the window. The river glimmered, the city bustled. And for the first time, Manhattan didn't make her feel small. She placed a hand on her belly. "This could change everything for us." Rowan smiled. "Exactly." But the moment's peace shattered when her phone buzzed violently on the table. A call from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, Harper answered. A sharp voice cut through the line. "Mrs. Ellington? This is Attorney Paul Granger. Your husband has issued an emergency filing. He's petitioning for temporary financial control due to your instability." Harper's blood ran cold. "My instability?" "Yes," the attorney continued. "He claims you're emotionally unfit and making reckless decisions. He's asking the court to freeze your accounts immediately." Harper's fingers tightened around the phone. Her pulse throbbed in her ears. Grant wasn't just fighting back. He was attacking first. Rowan watched her expression change, his eyes narrowing with concern. "Harper," he said quietly. "What did he do now?" Harper swallowed, her resolve hardening like steel. "He wants to take everything," she whispered. "Then it's time," Rowan said, rising from his seat, "for us to take something back." Harper Ellington had spent years shrinking herself to make her marriage work, quieting her opinions, softening her needs, dimming her light so Grant could shine. But as she prepared for the Literacy Foundation event Rowan invited her to, something inside her shifted permanently. This time, she wasn't dressing to impress a man. She was dressing to reclaim her life. Rowan had arranged for a driver to pick her up, knowing her pregnancy made long walks difficult. When Harper stepped into the back seat, she glanced at her reflection in the window. Her hair was softly curled, her dress a simple navy that hugged her growing belly with dignity instead of shame. She looked like the woman she used to be, only wiser, steadier, stronger. The event was held in a renovated art hall overlooking Central Park. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the room in warm light. Soft jazz floated through the air. People chatted with easy confidence, wearing name badges representing schools, nonprofits, and companies that believed in children's futures. Harper froze for a moment at the entrance. She didn't belong to Grant's cold, glittering world of status symbols, but she belonged here where purpose mattered more than appearance. "Harper," Rowan called, crossing the room toward her. His smile, warm, genuine, felt like the first sunrise after a long winter. "You look incredible." She blushed but held her head high. "Thank you. I feel different." "That's because you finally get to be yourself," Rowan said. He introduced her to donors, educators, and board members. Each time she spoke about her work with children, the room softened. People listened. They admired her empathy, her insight. Harper felt something she hadn't felt in years: confidence. For a moment, she forgot the chaos Grant had unleashed. Until she didn't. The room quieted, heads turned. A ripple moved through the crowd, subtle but unmistakable. Grant Ellington had just walked in. Harper felt her breath catch in her throat. He wore the arrogance of a man who expected to control the narrative, even while his world crumbled beneath him. Eyes scanned the room until they landed on her standing beside Rowan, glowing in a way Grant had never seen. He approached, jaw tight. "Harper," he said through a tense smile, "we need to talk." Rowan stepped closer, a steady wall at her side. "She's busy." Grant ignored him. "Harper, you can't keep avoiding me. We're still married, and you're still carrying my child." The words hit her harder than she expected, not because he was right, but because he suddenly cared now that he was desperate. Harper straightened her shoulders. Her voice was calm, steady. "You lost the right to speak to me like that." Grant's eyes narrowed. "If you keep this attitude, you're going to regret it." Rowan's hand subtly moved toward Harper's back, and the entire room watched, because no one expected what Harper was about to say next. For the first time since she married him, Harper Ellington did not shrink beneath Grant's stare. She didn't twist her hands, didn't lower her gaze, didn't apologize for her own existence the way she once had. She simply looked at him, calm, steady, unshaken, and that unsettled Grant more than any argument could have. "Harper," he said slowly, as if speaking to a child, "this isn't the place for a scene." "There's no scene," she replied, voice even. "Only the truth." A few nearby guests exchanged glances, sensing the tension. Rowan remained beside her, silent but immovable, a presence Grant could not ignore. Grant's jaw tightened. "We can work this out. You shouldn't be here with him." Harper almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd how quickly Grant wanted to claim what he had thrown away like garbage. "You left me," Harper said quietly, repeatedly, emotionally, physically, financially. "That's not fair." "It's accurate." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Look, Harper, I messed up, but we're having a baby. We can fix this. You can come home." The word home hit her like a cold wind. The sleepless nights, the empty bed, the unanswered calls as she lay on the floor in pain, the silence where comfort should have been. She lifted her chin. "There is no home, Grant, just a place where I wasn't wanted." Grant's smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of panic. "You're being dramatic." "Celeste, she doesn't matter. She was a mistake." Rowan's eyebrow lifted, but he stayed still, letting Harper speak for herself. "Celeste was your choice," Harper corrected. "I was your commitment." Grant's eyes hardened. "He got into your head, didn't he?" He shot Rowan a glare. "A man like him only helps you because he wants something." Rowan didn't react. He didn't need to. His calmness made Grant look even more frantic. Harper stepped forward, her voice low but unwavering. "Rowan didn't break my marriage, Grant. You did, and you can't undo that." Grant's expression shifted from arrogance to desperation, from desperation to anger. "You'll regret this," he snapped. "Courts look at these things. Judges don't like unstable wives running around with other men while pregnant." Gasps rippled through the room. Rowan finally spoke, his tone quiet but deadly precise. "Be careful, Grant. You're forgetting there are witnesses here." Grant opened his mouth, but before he could respond, another voice sliced through the air. "Grant Ellington?" Everyone turned. A woman in a charcoal suit approached, flipping open a badge. "I'm Detective Rivera. We need to speak privately." Grant's face drained of color, because Rowan wasn't the only one who knew about Celeste's scheme. And the law had finally caught up. Detective Rivera's unexpected arrival sent a ripple through the event hall, but Harper barely had time to process it. Rowan guided her to a quiet corner, his hand steady on her back. Her heart was racing not just from shock, but from a deeper fear rising inside her. Grant wouldn't go down quietly, and she was right. Within hours, Harper received another call from her lawyer. Grant had officially filed a petition, not for reconciliation, not to apologize, not to make amends. He was fighting for control. "Harper," her attorney said, voice tense, "Grant is requesting temporary custody rights and financial authority. He's claiming you're emotionally unstable and incapable of making sound decisions during your pregnancy." Harper pressed a hand to her chest. "He's trying to take the baby? He's trying to take everything," the attorney replied. "Your medical decisions, your finances, even where you're allowed to live." Harper felt the room spin. Her baby, her son, was the one thing keeping her heart beating. Losing him wasn't an option. Not now. Not ever. Rowan watched her shoulders tremble and gently took her phone, finishing the call before sitting beside her. "He wants custody because he's scared," Rowan said quietly. "Scared you're stronger than he expected. Scared you have proof that could destroy him." "But he's the father," Harper whispered. "What if the court believes him?" "Courts believe evidence," Rowan replied, "and we're going to give them more than enough." He opened a file on his tablet. Documents, messages, transfers, everything he'd uncovered. Harper stared at the screen as the truth sharpened before her eyes. Grant hadn't merely cheated. He hadn't merely abandoned her. He had funneled money illegally, forged records, and tried to shift blame onto her to shield himself. "He's dangerous," Harper murmured. Rowan exhaled slowly. "Yes. But danger loses its power when exposed." Harper lifted her chin. "Then let's expose him. All of him." Her voice didn't shake this time. It didn't break. It carried the weight of a woman who'd finally decided she wouldn't be afraid anymore. The next morning, accompanied by Rowan, Harper arrived at the courthouse. Reporters had already gathered news of Grant's leaked video, and suspected financial misconduct had begun circulating. Every camera that flashed only solidified her resolve. Grant arrived minutes later, dark circles under his eyes, tie crooked, arrogance cracked. He spotted Harper and stormed toward her. "You think you can win?" he hissed. "You're weak, Harper. You always have been." She stepped closer, calm as steel. "Not anymore." Grant opened his mouth to retort when Detective Rivera appeared again, expression grim. "Mr. Ellington, we need to speak with you before the hearing. New evidence just surfaced." Grant froze, and Harper suddenly realized Rowan wasn't the only one who had been investigating Grant. Someone else had turned against him too. The courtroom smelled faintly of old paper and tension. Harper Ellington sat at the petitioner's table, hands folded over her belly protectively. She had imagined this moment for weeks, Grant trying to twist the narrative, painting her as unstable, emotional, unfit. But she had not imagined feeling this calm. Rowan sat directly behind her, a steady presence. His silent reassurance seemed to fill the space around her like armor. Grant, on the other hand, looked shaken. His hair was slightly out of place, his collar crooked, a sheen of sweat glistening on his forehead. Detective Rivera's new evidence had rattled him the first time Harper had ever seen true fear in his eyes. The judge entered. The room rose. The hearing began. Grant's attorney stood first, launching into a carefully rehearsed speech. "Your Honor, my client seeks financial oversight and temporary custody, as Mrs. Ellington has demonstrated repeated instability and erratic behavior during her pregnancy." "Objection," Harper's lawyer cut in. "We have substantial evidence to the contrary." The judge raised a hand. "Proceed. Show me." Harper's attorney opened a folder. The first exhibit, hospital records, timestamped at 11:47 p.m. Harper admitted for fainting while alone. Mrs. Ellington attempted to contact her husband 7 times that evening, the attorney explained. Mr. Ellington did not respond. Grant shifted in his seat. Next exhibit. Security footage Rowan carrying Harper into the ER. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Grant's attorney objected again, but the judge waved it off. Let it stand. Then came the financial records. Rowan had uncovered transfers from Harper and Grant's joint account to Celeste Monroe's business. Thousands of dollars. Unapproved. Grant's face paled. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Ellington, do you wish to explain why marital funds were diverted without Mrs. Ellington's consent? Grant opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His attorney whispered frantically, "Say something." Grant finally managed. It was a misunderstanding. The judge didn't blink. It appears to be misconduct. Harper felt Rowan's hand lightly squeeze her shoulder. She hadn't realized she was trembling. Then came the final blow. Detective Rivera rose from her seat. "Your Honor, new evidence indicates Mr. Ellington may have knowingly participated in a fraudulent marketing operation linked to Celeste Monroe. We request permission to seize his electronic records." Gasps. Whispers. Grant's attorney nearly choked. The judge nodded. Permission granted. Grant shot up from his chair. "You can't do this." But he was no longer in control. Not of the narrative. Not of the courtroom. Not of Harper. The judge turned to her. "Mrs. Ellington, given the evidence, I see no grounds to restrict your custody or financial autonomy. Temporary sole medical and financial authority is awarded to you effective immediately." Harper exhaled a breath that tasted like freedom. Grant stared at her, fury and desperation twisting together. And then, a familiar pair of heels clicked into the room. Celeste Monroe had just walked in. The courtroom door swung open with the sharp click of designer heels, and every head turned. Celeste Monroe appeared like a shadow wrapped in luxury, sleek pencil skirt, flawless makeup, posture sharpened by arrogance. She scanned the room with the confidence of someone who had walked into dozens of high-stakes boardrooms and never once doubted her power. But this room wasn't impressed. Harper felt her pulse quicken, not fear, but a strange, steady strength. She wasn't the trembling woman Celeste once dismissed at corporate dinners. She was someone new, someone who no longer flinched. Celeste's eyes met Harper's for half a second. Something unreadable flickered there. Annoyance, calculation, maybe even regret. But she quickly masked it, turning her focus to Grant, who looked like he'd just been hit by a truck. "Grant," Celeste hissed under her breath as she approached him. "Why didn't you tell me the police were involved?" Grant glared at her. "Why didn't you tell me you were being investigated?" Detective Rivera stepped forward, voice cool and professional. "Miss Monroe, you're here at a convenient time. We have questions for you as well." Celeste stiffened. "Me? I haven't done anything." The detective raised a brow. "We'll let the records decide that." Whispers rolled through the courtroom like a slow wave. Grant grabbed Celeste's arm. "You can fix this. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them I didn't know." Celeste yanked her hand back. "Why would I do that, Grant? This wasn't supposed to touch me." Harper watched the exchange with a strange, almost surreal clarity. The two people who had caused her so much pain together, unraveling, their perfect alliance crumbling the moment accountability approached. "Mr. Ellington," the judge said, her voice echoing through the chamber, "your misconduct is now part of an ongoing criminal inquiry. Until further notice, your petition is suspended." Grant staggered. "Suspended? No, Your Honor, this is ridiculous. She's trying to destroy me." The judge frowned. "You seem to be doing that on your own." More laughter rippled through the gallery, quiet, shocked, triumphant. Celeste tried to step away, but Detective Rivera blocked her path. "I'm afraid you're coming with us for questioning, Miss Monroe." Celeste's confidence finally cracked. "This is crazy. I'm not going anywhere without my lawyer." Grant almost laughed ugly, bitter. "You don't have one? That's a first." She shot him a furious glare. "You're the one who dragged me into this mess." But Grant wasn't listening. His focus had locked on Harper, standing tall, calm, surrounded by support instead of fear. For the first time, he realized she was untouchable. The judge dismissed the session, and reporters swarmed outside. Rowan ushered Harper through the side exit, keeping her safe from the noise. As they stepped into the hallway, Harper finally exhaled. Then her phone buzzed. A message. From a name she never expected. It was from Celeste. And the first line read, "We need to talk. It's about Grant, and it's worse than you know." Harper never expected her phone to light up with Celeste Monroe's name. For a moment, she wondered if exhaustion was making her hallucinate. But no, the text was real, sharp, urgent. "We need to talk. It's about Grant, and it's worse than you know." Harper sat on the edge of Rowan's office sofa, the quiet hum of the foundation building settling around her. Rowan had stepped out to take a call, giving her a moment to breathe. But the message wouldn't let her. Why would Celeste contact her? Why now after everything? A second message arrived. "Please, I don't have anyone else to tell." Harper's stomach tightened, but not from fear. Instinctively, she rested her hand on her belly. Her son kicked softly, as if reminding her she wasn't alone. Minutes later, Celeste arrived at the building without her signature confidence. Her makeup was smudged, her hair loose, her expression haunted. She looked like a woman whose world was cracking faster than she could glue it back together. Harper stood when she entered. "Why are you here?" Celeste exhaled shakily. "Because Grant is not who you think he is. And I don't mean the affairs or the money, it's worse." Harper crossed her arms, steady but wary. "Start talking." Celeste glanced toward the door before speaking. "Grant didn't just misuse funds. He's been forging signatures, hiding assets, covering illegal transfers, and he used my business as the laundering channel." Harper's breath caught. "You helped him?" "I thought it was harmless at first," Celeste whispered. "Small amounts, favors. But then it grew. He became reckless, angry, obsessed with getting more power." Tears welled in her eyes. "I tried to pull away, but he threatened to destroy my career. He said he'd make sure I never worked in Manhattan again." Harper's heart clenched not with sympathy, but recognition. She knew what it felt like to be controlled by Grant's quiet cruelty. "Why tell me this?" Harper asked. Celeste swallowed hard. "Because I heard him last night. He was talking to someone over the phone. He said if this case went badly, he'd take care of the Harper problem permanently." Harper froze. "What does that mean?" Celeste shook her head violently. "I don't know, but he sounded dangerous, different, like he'd already made up his mind." A cold wave washed over Harper. Grant's arrogance had always been destructive, but violence? She had never imagined he could go that far. Celeste stepped closer, desperation cracking her voice. "Harper, you need to protect yourself. And your baby." The office door opened. Rowan stepped inside, pausing when he saw Celeste. "What's going on?" he asked, tone sharp. Celeste turned to him, trembling. "Grant's not losing gracefully. He's planning something. Something that could hurt her." Rowan's expression darkened instantly. Then he just made the biggest mistake of his life. The night Harper went into labor came earlier than expected. She had spent the afternoon at Rowan's foundation office, reviewing curriculum drafts for the literacy project. For the first time in months, her life felt grounded, structured, but excitement had a way of taking its toll on her exhausted body. By evening, the tightening in her belly grew sharper, more rhythmic. Harper tried to brush it off at first, telling herself it was just stress. But when the pain suddenly tightened into a fierce contraction, she grabbed the edge of the desk, gasping. Rowan rushed to her side instantly. "Harper, talk to me." It's time," she whispered, breath uneven. "Something's happening." Without hesitation, Rowan scooped her coat from the chair and helped her to her feet. "We're going to the hospital, now." Unlike Grant's dismissive coldness, Rowan's presence was steady, commanding, safe. He guided her gently down the hallway, one arm braced around her back, one hand holding hers with a firmness that told her she wasn't alone. Not anymore. Not ever again. During the drive, Harper clutched Rowan's hand through each wave of pain. He murmured calm encouragements, his thumb brushing circles over her knuckles, grounding her through every breath. "You're doing incredible," he whispered. "Your son already has the strongest mother I've ever met." Tears blurred her vision, not from pain this time, but from something deeper. Something like gratitude, something like finally being cared for. At the hospital, nurses rushed her into a birthing suite. Rowan stayed right beside her, refusing to step back even when staff told him he could wait outside. "She asked me to stay," he said firmly, and Harper squeezed his hand in agreement. Hours passed in a blur of contractions, pushing, exhaustion, and determination. The world narrowed to rhythmic breathing, Rowan's steady voice, and the promise of the little boy who had survived every heartbreak with her. Then, a sharp cry pierced the room. Her baby, her son. The nurse placed the tiny, wriggling newborn onto Harper's chest, and the world stopped. Harper sobbed, overwhelmed, clutching him as though he were the missing piece of her soul finally returned. Rowan wiped a tear from her cheek, voice breaking. "You did it, Harper." But the moment of peace didn't last long. A nurse stepped into the room, hesitant. "Miss Ellington, there's someone downstairs demanding to be allowed up. He says he's the father and has legal rights." Harper's heart lurched. "Grant?" Rowan's expression hardened into something she had never seen on him before. Cold, protective, dangerous. "Tell him," Rowan said quietly. "He'll have to go through me first." Rows of fluorescent lights hummed above the hospital hallway as Rowan Beckett stepped out of Harper's birthing suite, his expression carved from steel. Moments earlier, he had held Harper's son in his arms, a tiny, perfect life who had entered the world with a cry loud enough to announce a new beginning. But now Rowan faced something far darker. Grant Ellington. Grant stood at the end of the corridor, disheveled, sweating, eyes wild with equal parts fear and entitlement. He looked nothing like the polished businessman Harper once married. His world had crumbled, his job in jeopardy, his reputation shredded, Celeste turning on him, and the law closing in. But in his mind, control of Harper, control of the baby, meant control of his narrative. "You need to let me in," Grant growled, stepping forward. "That is my child. I have rights." Rowan didn't blink. "You had rights, and then you abandoned them." Grant scoffed. "You think you can keep me out? I'm the father." "You weren't a father when Harper was crying alone on the kitchen floor," Rowan said quietly. "You weren't a father when she fainted while calling for you. You weren't a father any moment she begged for your support." For a flicker of a second, something like guilt crossed Grant's face, but it hardened quickly into anger. "She's manipulating you," Grant snapped. "She wants your sympathy. You don't know her like I do." Rowan stepped closer. "I know her well enough to stand between her and anyone who hurts her." Grant clenched his jaw. "If I don't see my son, I'll file an emergency petition. I'll take this to court. No judge is going to deny me access." A nurse approached cautiously. "Sir, the mother has requested privacy. We can't let you in without her consent." Grant barked. "Consent? She's unstable. She's emotional. Enough," Rowan said sharply. At that moment, the birthing suite door opened. Harper stood there, pale, exhausted, shaking slightly, but radiant in a way Grant had never recognized. Her newborn son rested against her chest, wrapped in a soft blue blanket. When she looked at Grant, there was no fear left, only clarity. "Grant," she said softly, "you will not raise your voice in this hallway, not around my child." He blinked. "Our child?" Harper shook her head. "No, mine. And when the court sees the evidence, they'll understand why." Grant's face twisted. "You can't shut me out like this." "I won't let you." Harper stepped closer, Rowan steady at her side. "You already let me go," she whispered. "The night you walked past our son's toy on the floor." Grant's breath hitched, as if the memory stabbed him. Then the nurse returned, this time with urgency. "Miss Ellington, there's something you need to see. A detective is here with new information. It's about Grant." Grant stiffened, and Harper realized the final truth about her husband was moments away from being exposed. Detective Rivera stepped into the hospital hallway with a folder clutched tightly under her arm. Her expression was firm, businesslike, but her eyes softened when they met Harper's. Grant stiffened beside Rowan, sweat forming along his temples. "Miss Ellington," Rivera said gently, "you and your child are safe. But there's something you should hear before we take Mr. Ellington into custody." Grant exploded. "Into what? I haven't done anything." Rivera opened the folder. "We have evidence connecting you to Celeste Monroe's fraudulent financial scheme, forged signatures, money laundering, misuse of your wife's identity, and several recorded calls indicating intent to manipulate custody through intimidation." No, Harper, listen," Grant stammered, reaching toward her. "They twisted everything. Celeste lied. Rowan lied. You know me." Harper stepped back, her newborn's tiny head tucked beneath her chin. "I knew who you were," she whispered, "and I finally know who I am without you." Grant's face crumpled, panic rising. "Harper, please, don't let them take me. You can fix this. Tell them I'm a good man." Her eyes met his calm, steady, resolute. "You walked past our son's toy that morning," she said softly. And you walked past me. That choice brought you here, not me. Detective Rivera nodded to her partner. Grant Ellington, you are under arrest. As the cuffs clicked around his wrists, Grant turned to Harper with a final, desperate plea. You'll regret this. Harper shook her head. I stopped regretting the day I chose to protect my child over protecting your ego. They led him away down the hallway, his footsteps growing fainter until silence reclaimed the space. For a moment, Harper simply breathed. Then she felt Rowan step beside her, warm, steady, unshakable. He looked at her, not the exhausted woman who'd been abandoned, but the mother, the survivor, the woman rising from the ashes of a life she never deserved. You're free now, Rowan said softly. Harper brushed a tear from her cheek, not from sadness, but from profound relief. For the first time, she murmured, I believe that. Rowan hesitated, then spoke carefully, almost shyly. I don't want to overstep, but when you're ready, Harper, truly ready, I'd like the chance to build something real with you. A family, a life, not to erase your past, but to honor your future. Harper looked at him, the man who held her hand in fear, who stood guard at every door, who treated her and her son as something precious. And for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a love without pain. She smiled, tears warming her eyes. I'd like that future too. Because healing wasn't just survival. It was choosing something better than what broke you. So, that's where our story closes. And if you are still here with me at this moment, then something in Harper's journey must have touched your heart in a way that words alone can't explain. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength, or of a moment you thought you wouldn't survive but somehow did. Life has a way of breaking us open, just enough for the light to get in. The Stoics used to say, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Harper couldn't control Grant's betrayal or the pain she faced, but she could choose how to rise from it. And so can you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, what stands in the way becomes the way. Sometimes the very thing meant to destroy us becomes the path to our healing, our clarity, and our new beginning. If this story made you feel seen, understood, or just a little less alone, then don't go quietly. Leave a like, share it with someone who might need these words, and subscribe so you can walk with us through more stories that heal, empower, and remind us of our worth. You matter. Your story matters. And we'll be right here, walking the next chapter with you.